Hello and welcome to the Finding Something More to Talk About book club. I'm Nancy Rench, your host. Our book this month is Brene Brown's The 10-Year Edition of the Gifts of Imperfection. Joining our discussion today is Cindy Stewart from Oxnard, California, Diana Melcher from Lubbock, Texas, Kate Gregory from Huntington Beach, California, and Jasmine Sharp of Anaheim Hills, California. Welcome, ladies. Let's talk. Brene Brown writes and is all about wholehearted living, engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. No matter what gets done or goes undone each day, we are enough. And for me, there was just so much to absorb in not only the 10 guideposts that Brene talks about throughout the book, but also the sections within sections I kept going back to and reflecting on. How do you feel about what you've read so far?
Hi, Nancy. This is Kate.
Hi.
Hi. I have read this book before and had this book, and I could read it again and again and again. It's interesting to me how everything is all interconnected. All of the guideposts are interconnected together. And there are some things that really, stand out to me about this book. I just think it's excellent, an excellent tool for living a good life.
Hi, this is Cindy. I also had this book, and I think it's quite interesting as we kind of had chatted and learned that all of us had this book on our bookshelf somewhere, that I think it speaks to a degree of self-awareness anyway, in that we all knew of our perfectionistic tendencies and probably wanted a little bit of help to escape that burden that perfectionism places on us. In rereading the book, I, like Kate, really absorbed a lot more all of the different guideposts and how they interrelate. And I think the one thing that stood out for me that I don't know that I totally absorbed the first time around was that perfectionism is shame-based. Perfectionism is not our desire to improve. It's a desire or a coping mechanism of overcoming the things that we feel inadequate about.
Right. And let's just stop right there. Let's talk about shame. Shame is defined, and I did look it up. I wanted to see what is the definition of shame, because it's so prevalent in all of our lives. It's that intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us feel unworthy of connection. And connection is living a wholehearted life, she writes in her book. Let's talk about shame just for a moment.
Yeah, this is Jasmine. I think that shame is just I love how Brene puts it in her book about how shame prevents you from connection, which is the other ladies. I have also read this book before, and I just think that it's a great book. But what really stood out to me in reading it this time was that shame isn't just something that we want to try to avoid. Shame is something that is inevitable, but it's something that can be used we can turn shame around and turn it into vulnerability, which is what I really liked about the book. Brene didn't say, don't be not perfect. She didn't say the goal is perfect. She said that we obviously are all flawed, and we need to not only accept those flaws, but be open and honest and vulnerable with them, because if we're not honest about ourselves, then we're never going to become connected with other people. We're never going to develop close relationships.
Right. Exactly. Oh, I love the way that you put that. She also writes, I learned how to worry more about how I felt and less about what people might think. And that was huge to me. How do I feel? Not what you think. How am I feeling right now? And how do I set boundaries? So the question is, what about you? When or with whom are you most likely to say yes when you mean no? And does it turn into resentment or blame?
Can the answer be yes, everyone?
Yes. Nancy, this is Diana.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. I've always wrestled with this, wanting to be involved with just wanting to be involved and connected. And, sometimes we get ourselves in a position where we are overwhelmed, or we just obligate ourselves for too many things because we want to be involved. And then we end up, I guess, resenting being a perfectionist anyway. I end up sometimes resenting the amount of time it takes to do something perfectly or how I want to do it. If I go into it with a good idea of the time commitment and that sort of thing, then that's one thing. But if it turns into be something a lot more than what I expected it to be, I still want to have that level of perfectionism there where I want to do a good job. I committed myself and I want to be available. I want to do the best job I can. Absolutely. I want people to know they can count on me, that sort of thing. And so sometimes there is some resentment there when you just, because of time constraints or whatever, you just can't follow through the way you want to.
Right.
The hardest people to say no to are the people that are important to me, which my daughter, my fiance, my dear friends. Sometimes I think we can not want to say no because we want to show, well, this is me speaking, maybe I want to show how capable I am. And I think that's something to avoid for myself. I really do, whenever I am asked to do something that I know is going to take a lot of time, I do think, okay, is this something that I can do, excellently, or is it something that I can't do excellently? And if I'm not going to be able to fulfill the commitment, I won't do it. But it is hard to say no to the people that are important to us, even sometimes when you should.
Right.
Right.
I think along those lines too, that, I've always been a yes person. And I know in looking back, a lot of that was just being fearful of disappointing whoever would be asking for a favor or my time, and probably my need to please people. And then underlying that is my need to feel that connection and belonging. And I know that Brene tackles that in her book, is that when we are not authentic, many times it's because we need to feel that we are belonging to a group or an idea or what have you. We lose our authenticity by that desire or that subconscious need.
That emotional feeling that we get when you get the accolades, or somebody goes overboard on what you have done, whether it took you a long time or if you just whipped it together, you get that acknowledgement, and to really sit and think that acknowledgement really, what is that? Does that really, am I taking away from my authenticity of who I am? Am I taking away from living wholeheartedly and digging deep when I need to make a decision? And let's talk about digging deep. She said, do you dig deep or do you dig deep?
Well, I used a wholehearted approach, over many weeks, months, and years in the beginning of my sobriety. I had to dig deep to get to the root cause of why I turned to alcohol to numb my pain, numb the experiences that I was going through. Mm-hmm. And, without the proper support team, counseling, privately and group sessions, etc., I might not have been able to do that. And, I tell people, I'm mentoring a young woman right now who's struggling with her alcoholism. I tell her that in time, she will grow to really appreciate the fact that she's a recovering alcoholic, because the 12-step program offers so many opportunities to dig very deeply into your life and all of your relationships.
Nancy, in looking at the section of the book, I'm going back over when she uses dig, D-I-G, that is, she says that's being deliberate in your thoughts and actions. get inspired to make new and different choices, and then get going. And yes, I think especially that get going, if you want things to change, you need to take action. And I think it's a process of self-discovery. I think, you have to discover what really makes you happy in order to be deliberate, or inspired or get going. What makes me happy, as opposed to, what is supposed to make me happy. Then live with a true commitment in your daily life. But I think taking action, for me was the key word there, is, discovering what it is to dig, and then trying to live that out.
Right.
I love that, Diana. That's so true. And I really resonated, Kate, with what you were saying earlier about being afraid of being seen as not capable. And I think that that's something that stood out to me when we were talking about digging deep in the book, and how Brene was saying that you need to take action to get going, but it doesn't necessarily have to be action to work harder. I mean, I am definitely a perfectionist and a workaholic, but she says, if you want to have a more fulfilled life, if you want to achieve what she's trying to tell us about in these guideposts, it very much can include needing to take a break, needing to rest, but still, just like you were saying, Diana, you still have to take action to make that happen. You can't just say, I'm going to rest more, and then never do it, which is something I'm very guilty of.
Okay, well, let's go down to talking about the guidepost, cultivating self-compassion and letting go of perfectionism. She says that anytime you're struggling with something, know that there are other people out there who share in that challenge. Practicing mindfulness by allowing ourselves to actually feel what we're feeling without over-identifying with those feelings, because all feelings are temporary. Perfectionism, on the other hand, does the opposite and encourages you to be mean to yourself, to disconnect you from others and resist feeling what you're actually feeling. It ignores the constraints of reality and drags you down with it. How do you handle self-compassion and letting go of perfectionism? Have you been able to use some of these ideas that she has and habits that you may currently have? Have you tried to overcome some of these, and what do you do? Let's start with Diana.
I love when I read, she said, operate from a place that we're doing the best we can. That really spoke to me. Actually, I think that gives you permission to say that, being perfectionists, some of us, just, we drive ourselves sometimes. And it's nice to know that I think, in just the light of this last year where so many things have happened to us, the lockdown and things out of our control, that we can tell ourselves, it's okay to just do the best you can. You just don't, You don't have to just, drive yourself, just do the best you can. So I think, practicing self-kindness there and mindfulness, but really just, strive to do the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's so true, Diana. I'm just loving everything you're saying today. I absolutely agree. And it's not only just striving to do the best you can, but focusing on, especially for us perfectionists, focusing on, even if you feel like you have this big goal that you're trying to achieve and you can't get it done in the timeline that you wish you could have, instead of saying, oh, I failed, reframing that into, okay, I did accomplish these 3 little things, and focusing on your accomplishments, because that definitely helps in exactly what you were saying, Diana, that self-kindness and self-compassion, and focusing on the things that you've accomplished and succeeded in, instead of saying you failed in something that, as I'm sure we all know, we are holding ourselves to a higher standard than anyone else is.
Right. Yes, we do.
I think sometimes for me, just saying, it's okay, you're human, when I make a mistake or I've messed up a project or something along those lines, just to recognize my humanity and to say, oh, well, I'll do it differently next time. Or now I've learned what doesn't work, so I'll try a new approach next time. And I think being gentler with myself as far as knowing when I need rest, knowing when I need to get off that little hamster wheel and just take a break from it all. And I think that that speaks to self-compassion, taking care of myself, my mind, my body, my emotional state, my physical state.
One of the things that I really what resonated with what you said too was that a lot of times for me personally, I will judge my feelings. So if I'm having a painful emotion, I will maybe shame myself and say, why am I feeling that? I shouldn't feel this way. Buck up, feel better. And one of the things I've learned from Brene and also through grief work is that our feelings are normal and natural. And it's better to acknowledge them. And it's also better to just let yourself feel them because they will pass. And I like in this chapter where she talks about not over-identifying or exaggerating them at the same time. Because I think we sometimes live on a pendulum where we think we're either supposed to be totally happy or we're over-exaggerating. And I think maybe we over-exaggerate because we suppress it. So it's been eye-opening for me to recognize that it's okay to feel how I.
We're going to end on this question, and it's her guidepost: cultivating your resilient spirit, letting go of numbing and powerlessness. So my question is, do you have something that you do, say, or act upon to numb yourself?
Well, for me, a very big part of my alcoholic drinking was an attempt to numb life, numb my feelings, numb everything I was experiencing. These days, I find when I've had a real frustrating day, I go out to the garage and I get on my elliptical, and it's a way for me to not necessarily numb, but to work out the frustration or the anxiety or what have you. So I guess, I'm compelled to turn to exercise for my numbing.
I think sometimes for me, I will look at social media or Netflix, and then the time goes by or Google. And I think, oh my gosh, an hour just went by. And then, of course, then we can get into the little shame game of, I can't believe I just spent an hour on Google because I went down the rabbit hole. So,
and that's an endless cycle.
Yes.
Nancy, I see in here where she says one of the bullet points in this section is we cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions. Mm-hmm. And that, really, I highlighted that and underlined it as well, because I think that's, a good point to remember, that you can't do one thing without doing the other. Basically, you're numbing the painful things, but you're also numbing your, positivity and your creativity and your, the things that get you by on a daily basis.
Right. And your growth, right?
That's so true, Diana. It's like we're not capable of shutting down just one small area of our lives. We shut down completely when we do that.
And that's exactly what Brene was saying with, like, we have to be vulnerable in order to have those connections, which means we have to accept that sometimes negative emotions are part of it. If we want to be able to have the positive emotions to be able to make those connections with other people.
Good point, Jazzy. That's, well said.
Yes. Well, this has been, again, wonderful conversation with 4 brilliant women. We have decided to have 2 separate talks on this book because there's so much to cover. So we're going to go ahead and end this session. I'd like to thank my guests for joining me today and the listeners tuning in. Remember, there's always something more to read about.